Today I'm going to talk about how I healed my eating disorder. Healing my eating disorder was one of the first and most important steps I took towards healing my depression, and it was so important both for my physical and my mental health. Looking back at it, I think there were many ways that eating disorder could have been avoided had I known then what I know now. I also found very practical steps and solutions to heal my eating disorder, so I really wanted to share them with you guys and hopefully help anyone who's struggling. So I'll start by telling you about my journey from being like a healthy, normal child to really struggling with an eating disorder. And I think this is really important because there are so many things here that could have been avoided, and I think they are risk behaviors that you should definitely look out for. I grew up on a farm, so I was quite sheltered and I was quite happy. I didn't even think about my body weight, although people did comment on my appearance from basically as early as I could remember. Ideas about my body and how it looked didn't really start until I was a teenager. It's been really easy for me to identify three main causes that triggered my eating disorder. The first thing that happened when I was a teenager was that my mom met a new partner, and he had two daughters from a previous relationship. Both of these girls were older than me, and we started living together all as a big family, and both of these girls had quite severe eating disorders. So even without trying to advocate for an eating disorder, both of them definitely gave me tips and also ideas on how to eat less and control your diet, which was very unhealthy for me at the time. The second thing that really happened was at the same time I also started my high school, which was a dance-focused high school, and weight was a really big question that I hadn't really thought about before, but both teachers and students were sort of working in a very unhealthy climate regarding weight. And the third thing that changed was my mental health declining. So for me, it became more and more difficult to control my mental health and my mental well-being, so I started to control my food instead. And my eating disorder went on for about 3 to 4 years before I realized that something desperately needed to change for me to be healthy and happy again. So in the end for me, after these 3 to 4 years, realizing that something needed to change was the biggest motivation and the most important thing in healing my eating disorder. To think about how the eating disorder actually made my life worse and not better, and it made me unhappy and not happier, was a really important mindset shift that really motivated me and kept motivating me to heal rather than focusing on diet. So if you're struggling, or if you even feel that you have slight tendencies towards an eating disorder, I'd really encourage you to think about these following thoughts. The first thought was I knew that I could never have children unless I healed myself, because I absolutely did not want to pass an eating disorder on to my kids. The second thing was that I realized it was simply too difficult to have an eating disorder for the rest of my life. It was just so unsustainable. The third thing I realized was I didn't want to ruin my health, and I knew having an eating disorder and not eating enough food was extremely unhealthy. The fourth thing was that I wasn't happy focusing all my energy and thoughts on food and the lack of food, and I really wanted to be happy. And the fifth thing was that I wanted to feel confident and happy with my body and myself, and I knew that change had to come from within. So basically the eating disorder ultimately made me so unhappy because I think sometimes people sort of fall into an eating disorder because they think it will change something, right? You think that if you become skinnier, you'll feel better, or people will like you more, and you'll feel better and happier and healthier. But that of course isn't the case. Not eating enough food is extremely unhealthy, it's dangerous, it's not healthy, it's not going to make anyone feel happy with themselves, and it's just not fun or sustainable. So after having felt terrible for quite a long time, and also trying to use the eating disorder to change my well-being, I just realized it wasn't working, right? The eating disorder didn't make me happier. In fact, it made me feel worse. So the first practical thing I realized I had to do for healing was to just stop. The easiest thing for me was to stop exercise, so I completely stopped exercise. So for 5 whole years, I didn't do any exercise whatsoever. I didn't go to the gym, I didn't even do stretching. I decided to just stop because I knew that if I didn't stop, it would simply not be sustainable for me. I knew that even if I felt that I thought I was ready, if I went back to exercise, it would simply become obsessive again. So I just decided to stop, and that was definitely the best answer for me. So for me, not exercising was very important to stop the negative thought patterns in my head and focusing on my body. So by not exercising, I took out so many thoughts I had about my body that simply just didn't exist anymore. So it was a promise to myself to not exercise, and it was very super important. The next practical step I took was to set a rule about eating. The rule that I had for quite a long time was that I was allowed to eat absolutely anything, but I wasn't allowed to not eat something because of ideas of my body or myself. This rule was really important because it was sort of one rule that eliminated most of the thoughts about diet and nutrition. And it was really difficult. It was way more difficult than not exercising, and it was also awkward and embarrassing at times because I would simply eat as much as I wanted, because this was my promise to myself. I couldn't stop because something I ate was unhealthy, or because it wasn't good for me, or because it was a bad thing to eat, or because it would make me gain weight or anything like that. So I would definitely go to cafes and stuff with my friends, and I would have 2 cookies instead of 1, or I would just eat more than everyone else. So this rule about eating absolutely anything I wanted whenever I wanted, I had for about 1 year, and then I became vegetarian. Healing an eating disorder is a long process, right? So that's why I really want to share every step here with you, but feel free to skip to the next step if you're not as interested in the diet nutrition part yet. So after about 3 years of being a vegetarian, I went fully vegan. So I kept the same rule that I was allowed to eat absolutely anything, no matter how healthy or unhealthy it was. It just couldn't contain any animal product. So that's skipping forward a little bit. So in the beginning of healing my diet and my eating disorder, I still had to change the mental aspect. So the most practical thing for me was to just stop talking about food. Because everything we say is just a thought that we say out loud, right? It's just something we're thinking that we're saying out loud. So to remove all the thoughts I had about food, I realized stopping exercising removed some of those thoughts. Not limiting my diet stopped some of those thoughts. But the last thing was really to stop talking about food, because that removed so many thoughts that I had about food. So one thing that really helped me for this, and I would highly recommend that you do, is to talk to the people you spend time with the most. I asked everyone that I spend time with to not talk about food. And this made it so much easier, because if a situation came up at a cafe or something where someone would like comment on what we were eating, or if it was healthy or not, or if they regretted it or not, or if they should have it or not, you know, like people do, instead of having to have an awkward conversation where I felt quite triggered, I could simply just say, hey, remember that we said I couldn't talk about food because I just can't go there? And they would instantly just snap out of it and just be like, oh, of course, yes, I'll talk about, you know, anything else that's more productive and healthy and fun to talk about. I think especially for women, it's sort of a social thing to talk about food a lot, and I hear adult women do this all the time, and also young women. It makes me so sad, because there's no point talking about food apart from the fact that it's delicious and fun. There is no reason to ever speak negatively about the food you're eating and what you should and shouldn't eat whilst you're eating. Like, of course, we can have discussions about, is it healthier to eat kale than chocolate? It is absolutely healthier to eat kale. So eat an abundance of kale then, and then we can drop that conversation. But there is never a point to sit and judge what we eat, what we have eaten, and if we should eat something or not. The other thought I completely removed by not speaking about it anymore was to stop commenting on my body. And I still don't comment on my body to this day, because I simply don't find it useful. This for me was just taking the simple way out. Yes, of course, you can sort of go on and say that, oh, but shouldn't you be allowed to talk about your body and like do it in a healthy way? But I just don't think there's a point. Like, why would I wake up one day and say, oh, I think I look skinnier today, or oh, I think I look chubbier today, or oh, I think I look bigger today? Like, it just means absolutely nothing. You know, if you want to talk about something important, then talk about something like spirituality, or love, or compassion, or animals. I think we can also fall into this trap quite easily about obsessing over things, anyone who has issues with that. So is that we obsess over health instead, or so-called health, or like over beauty instead. So I see a lot of people transitioning from an eating disorder into like a health fitness sort of thing. And I think it's really important to talk about the correlation between fitness and addiction. So I guess over time I can say that my relationship to food has changed a lot, and there's been a lot of healing my body and my mind, and also self-love in healing my eating disorder. And I'm really grateful that it has, because I think it's important to remember that sometimes an eating disorder is sort of glamorized in society, but the truth of having an eating disorder is that it sucks, it's unsustainable, it's super unhealthy, it ruins your metabolism, often ruins your skin, not good for your reproduction organs. it makes you feel fatigued, dizzy, your life sucks, you can't focus on things that make you feel happy, you're absolutely gonna get depressed, because it's just impossible basically to have an eating disorder without getting depressed. And you're focusing on things that don't matter, right? Like things how you look, or how other people perceive you, or how you think you look, rather than things that are meaningful in life, such as love and compassion and how we truly feel and what we want the world to look like, not what we want our physical appearance to look like. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all your support and comments on my other videos, and please know that I'm working very hard to finishing this van so I can film it, but as there's a lot of things going on in our lives right now, and living in a van is harder than we thought, and living in a van is a bit more challenging. We haven't really found our routine yet, but yeah, I'm gonna go back to finishing crocheting a doormat, and then I just have to sew some things, and then the van is pretty much done. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye. Men on motorbikes. I hate men on motorbikes. It's been really clear to